Hello. This is apparently Instagram Live. We've never done this before, but I felt like it was a good opportunity for us to open up the discussion to people who actually wanted to be talking about it instead of just reading what the media has to say about it. So I figured we'd talk about how we got here, what this means for us as agents, and what this means for your clients, and then what the future could potentially look like. And I want to say mainly could potentially look like because we have no clue. So we got here because a group of home sellers were upset with what they had to pay buyer's agents. And the emphasis is on had to. So they sued. This is the class action group plaintiffs of Burnett Seitzer. They sued all of the big real estate brokerages and the National Association of Realtors, and they won. And this was in November. So now we have been in the last few months just in this basically state of unknown. And up until last week, last Friday, NAR actually settled their end of it. And so what we are operating with now is what that settlement entails and trying to figure out how we move forward more than anything else. So first things first, let me just... Great. Okay. So there's a lot of pieces of the settlement that I think will be interesting to see how they play out, but I'm going to be very careful not to talk about things that are yet to be decided. And that's basically all of this, because no matter what, the Department of Justice still has to approve this thing. And we don't know if they're going to make changes to it or if they are going to say that they are fine with this. So all of this could change. And I feel like that has to be the overarching message today is so many things are still unknown and we will make changes as they come about. And the key thing is to make sure that the people that are in charge are paying attention and that the real estate agents are selling houses. And so if you are in a position where you do not feel like someone is, or your broker is not paying attention, please feel free to call us, because that is definitely what we are definitely paying attention, and we are definitely trying to be prepared for the future as best we possibly can with the amount of information that we're given and updates that are happening all the time. So the biggest thing that is going to happen is we are no longer going to be able to market how much commission we will pay a buyer's agent that brings as a listing agent brings a buyer to buy a listing, right? So I think that that's the thing that most people are scared about, and that the media has just taken and run with. I've seen so many things about the end of 6%. And how, buyer's agency is going to be obsolete. And I can't tell you how much I personally believe that both of those things are completely false. I do think that we're going to have a lot of different ways of commission being utilized, but and negotiated, but I definitely don't think we are going to be in a position where these things are just going to go away completely, right? So with that, the most important thing here that I think everyone needs to understand is the first part is this isn't all set in stone yet, and that we are going to be in a long few months of just complete unknown, and that the most important thing that everyone should be doing is just moving forward, right? So how I view commissions going forward is and this is again my best guess, is that it will still be just negotiated. And so because it will not be marketed and it will not be a guaranteed cooperation, then we will have to say, hey, listen, here's my offer for your house, and we are expecting you to pay this real estate commission. So what that will look like is very similar to what we do now, and from a sense of, if you believe you're worth a certain amount and you can prove it to the other co-oping agent, then you should have no problem getting what you're worth. And so if that's 3% or 2% or 2.5%, you should be able to get that. The important part about that is that because it won't be marketed, there is going to be something that we don't know about yet, some way that we're going to have to be able to either put that in our contracts, or it's just going to be a matter of making our offer present with those terms as part of it. So the other part of this is that we are going to have buyer agency as part of any time we show a property. So I've been, I should say Kansas City has been fortunate that buyer agency has been an essential part of buyer, representing a buyer. And so there won't be a ton of changes on that as far as our local market. It will change a lot of things as far as how certain types of agents go about things. It will be the end of the day of I get a Zillow lead and I go and open a door and I write a contract, and I've never explained anything about it to the client other than just being the person who picked up the phone the quickest, right? That won't happen anymore. And I think that's a good thing. It'll also change how we are able to go about having the conversations with our buyer clients. So it's going to change. It's instead of being able to just say, and this is where everyone got in trouble, is there were agents out there using language like, don't worry, you don't have to pay me, the seller pays my commission. And that's just not true. It's, at the end of the day, even if the seller is paying for it, as part of the transaction, they are getting paid by, you are, the buyer is the one who is paying it as part of it. And that confusion that everyone has is part of the problem with it. And that's why we ended up where we are. So what does this mean for agents today, right? It's going to be the land of confusion for a while, right? There's going to be media telling you one thing. There's going to be other agents telling you one thing. You're going to see plenty of people on TikTok claiming to know the world is ending. And I think that the most important thing is to find your trusted resource. Hopefully that's your broker, and follow what their advice is for the foreseeable future.
We do have one little question. It said, I could be wrong, but it says my understanding that the buyer's agency will have to be signed before seeing any property, which I know is a change for many of us who do not have buyers sign until an offer.
Yes. So the question is, will we have to have a buyer agency signed before showing a property, not just before we create the difference between a customer relationship to a client relationship, which is in general what the buyer agency's job was to take us from a customer where we do not have a fiduciary responsibility to that person to a client where we do have a fiduciary responsibility. And so basically what the settlement is saying is the moment you open the door for someone, and unless you're just sitting there with your mouth shut, you will basically initiate that client relationship. So that will change for things. Now, and again, because I do think that's going to be one of the things that changes, or it's going to get expanded because they left out open houses. So Can you not, the question mark that I had when I read that was, then can I not do an open house? Because how is the same thing as showing a property to someone that I just met different than someone walking into an open house? So, that one is to me, one of the bigger question marks in the settlement, because I don't, either they need to expand it or they need to, give greater clarification on how it'll work. But it is definitely one of the interesting things to be paying attention for. Again, as of right now, we operate this the way that we have been operating. And that's the important thing. So for our clients, this is probably the most important thing for agents to be aware of and be keeping their finger on things is when clients come to them, and any educated consumer at this point that has been paying attention or has been thinking about selling their house has heard about this. I have had multiple people ask me, now I don't have to pay a buyer's agent, and that is just not the case. It can be the case because this is all completely negotiable, right? But to say flat out that we won't pay it would be a detriment to to selling your property, right? And so the important thing for people thinking about selling their house right now is understanding these small differences between what is said in the media and what is reality, and the gradient between the two, right? Which is the misunderstanding. What the reality is commission has always been negotiable, and anyone who's been licensed long enough has seen their commission be changed based on circumstances within the transaction, right? So there shouldn't be a case where this torpedoes a listing or makes it unsellable or something like that. It's just going to become something more where we have to talk about it on the front end with our listing clients and our buyer clients. So instead of having the situation go where, especially for our buyer clients, it's just guaranteed. That can't be what we say. We have to say, you might end up having to pay me if I can't get the seller as part of our deal to pay our commission. So for the educated consumers out there, and that's the people that are paying attention, and honestly, I think it's a smaller amount of the population than we really think. I think a lot of people aren't aware what any of this even really means because they aren't in the process of preparing to sell a house, or they don't read the Wall Street Journal every day. They are going to have to be educated about this.
You do have two questions, but one of them is, do you think open houses will become more important for listing agents and buyers?
I don't know. I do think that that open houses could become a really amazing part if the rules stay the same, and that rule being that we are we must have a buyer agency signed before we can show a property, but open houses are fair game. Then open houses will become a very important part of agents' ability to establish a rapport with someone, because oftentimes for me, if it's a referral and I'm trying to prove my value, one of the best ways for me to do that was to take them inside of a house and walk them around a house and and show them what's going on, right? And sometimes that happens, in my opinion, before I establish that client relationship. In fact, it's me trying to prove the value in them and deciding to have that relationship with me and have me be their buyer's agent. So if I don't have that ability and I have to prove it before I can show a house, open houses will be an amazing way to do that. And if that's the way that it stays, there's a great opportunity for open houses to become a huge part of an agent's arsenal for having the opportunity to showcase themselves and have the initial interaction with the public without having to just show a house. So, but those rules could change at any point in this, right? Well, okay, next question.
We have, do you think that we will have more transaction brokers when this goes into place? And maybe you just like quickly, if there's clients or anything, talk about a transaction broker and what that means.
Sure. So a transaction broker is when it's a mode of agency where you do not represent any particular person, but you represent the transaction. And so instead of being able to give a fiduciary responsibility to someone, i.e., example, telling them, hey, I think we should offer this, or I think the house is worth this, all of that is removed from a transaction broker. The transaction broker says, hey, you need to sign this, dot this, here's what this document means, but I don't give you any advice on negotiations to that fiduciary side of things. And so the question is, do we think that transaction brokers will become a much more prevalent part of a real estate agent's job? And I don't think so. I think more so what is going to end up happening is we're going to be proving our value to our individual clients on the front end. And then, and if we're able to do that, we are then protecting not only our interests, but we're protecting their interests, right? So if anything, it's going to remove those persons who get both sides, right? Who put a sign in the yard, and then they hope a random unrepresented buyer shows up, and then they turn into a transaction broker. Hopefully this is going to remove that from the situation if we are doing our job right. Now, for the agents that aren't doing their job right, and they are just, and I'm going to put a little caveat here, a little pin in something, but if the agents aren't doing their job right, and they are not able to prove their value, then yeah, we're going to see the public just basically leave buyer agency behind because they don't want to pay for us. And mind you, I think that would be a terrible thing to have happen. But then they're just going to go and be unrepresented while they try and buy a house, which would be a shame. It'd be a terrible thing because I've seen countless times where the buyer gets taken advantage of because the listing agent is the one directing the transaction. And so when they're in charge, do you know who they represent? They represent the seller. They're the ones who hired them in the first place. And so your best interest is not being represented in that. So hopefully, if we're doing our jobs right, we're able to prove our value, transaction brokerage will not become a greater thing. Now, that little pin I want to take out right now, the lower the price point, the harder this will be to prove. And that's because first-time homebuyers, it's already a daunting task to save up a down payment in closing costs so that you can buy your first house. Everyone knows that, and no one would argue that fact. If we are going to add on to that, them having to pay a buyer agent as a potential, right? Hopefully it's not going to end up being a thing because we're able to negotiate it into the transaction. But if there's the potential that they have to pay in order to get the house they want, then yeah, there will be a lot more of those people having to be unrepresented, which again is a shame.
Let's say a buyer will want to negotiate what percent they want to pay you, and it's 2%. Mm-hmm. Would the realtor need to negotiate that other 1% with the seller to receive the full 3% commission?
You got it. So the question was if your buyer, as part of your buyer agency says, Dan, I'd be willing to pay you 2% guaranteed, no matter what happens in the transaction. Then it would be up to you to then go to the seller and say, hey, listen, I would like you to pay me the 1% that I feel I'm worth, and you would negotiate into the contract. There is obviously the potential that they would say no, and you would then only make 2%, or you'd have to go back to your buyer or client and say, they aren't going to pay me the next percent. Are you willing to?
Do you believe lending rules are going to have to change to add it into the loan and rules for VA buyers? Yeah,
so I think that at the end of the day, we don't need this to be a part of seller-paid concessions. And so for those that aren't aware, what that means is as part of the loan, as part of a transaction, the buyer can ask the seller to pay some of their closing costs. That cannot include commission, as per the FHFA's regulations. It can include a lot of other things, like prepaying your insurance or loan closing fees. Those things are, or interest buy downs. Those things that are something that a seller can pay for, but commission is not one of them. What I think is going to end up happening is the contracts are going to change so that we can say commission is paid by the seller directly to us, and it is not a credit towards the actual buyer's settlement statement. So it will essentially look exactly like it looks right now, not an additional closing cost. It will be something that is, if it's negotiated part of the transaction, we can say to the seller, you're going to pay me, and that's direct. It does not touch my buyer's hands and come back to me. And then it will essentially look the same as it looks now on a settlement statement or on closing documents or something like that.
No more questions. So if there's anything you wanted to kind of circle up and wrap up.
To me, the most important thing out of all of this is to not panic. I honestly, to me, I see two routes for this going. Is we're going to have drastic changes, or we're going to and things will actually move the needle. And I think that unfortunately the potential of that is pretty small. But I think that the most likely scenario for what happens is we change slightly how we do things and we move forward, right? And it's not going to be the end of real estate brokerages. It's not going to be the end of buyer agency. It's not going to be even the end of 6% commissions. It's going to be different on how we negotiate those on the front end. And that is going to be the most important part. So with all of that, I feel like for brokers or for agents is having a good broker. For clients who are potentially going to buy or sell a house, it's having a good agent, right? And knowing being able to stay up to date on stuff without worrying about it is probably the take-home message that I want everyone to hear today. Is this is all just things that are going to happen, and there's no need to sound the alarm or panic at the moment. So, anything else?
No, we're good.
Awesome. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all real soon.